Imagine this. You're leading a new state, and you're at war with not one, but two global superpowers at the same time. You are completely outmatched, you're stretched thin, and one of your fronts is on the verge of collapsing. So what do? Today, we're diving into what's known as the Caliph's Gambit, an incredible story of leadership, faith, and a military march that should have been impossible. Let's get right into it. So this was the fundamental massive problem facing the early Muslim state under the Caliph Abu Bakr. They weren't just fighting a war. No, they were fighting the two great empires of the age, the Byzantines and the Persians, simultaneously. I mean, how do you even begin to wrap your head around a challenge that huge? All right, to really get a feel for the kind of pressure they were under, we have to look at the map. This wasn't some small border conflict. We're talking about a massive war being fought across two completely separate and incredibly difficult fronts. Okay, so up to the northwest in Syria, you've got the Muslim armies going head-to-head with the full might of the Byzantine Empire. And at the exact same time, over to the northeast in Iraq, they're clashing with the powerful Sassanid Persian Empire. This was a direct challenge to the entire world order. And this brings us right to the heart of the story. With the situation getting more and more dangerous on both fronts, Caliph Abu Bakr knew that a standard military plan just wasn't going to cut it. He needed something bold. Something, frankly, a stroke of genius. Now, over on the Persian front in Iraq, there was one commander who was just, well, he was becoming a legend. Khalid ibn al-Waleed. He was a brilliant tactician, and he was leading his forces to one victory after another, keeping the huge Sassanid Empire completely off balance. And listen, this wasn't just battlefield gossip. The Caliph himself saw Khalid's incredible talent. In a letter, Abu Bakr gives him this direct praise, which just shows you how crucial Khalid was to the war in Iraq. He was, without a doubt, their star player. But here's the problem. While things were going great in Iraq, the situation in Syria was the total opposite. The armies there were really struggling against the dug-in, well-supplied Byzantine forces. They were stuck in a stalemate. And you have to understand, a stalemate against a superpower isn't a tie. It's just a slow, grinding defeat. So Abu Bakr makes his move. He sends an order to his best general, Khalid, leave the winning front in Iraq, and go reinforce the struggling one in Syria. But look at the warning he gives him. Never develop self-admiration. This is so much more than just advice. This goes right to the core of what the Prophet Muhammad taught. Victory wasn't a sign of personal greatness. It was a test from God. And pride was the surest path to failure. This is grand strategy that is completely rooted in deep, unshakable faith. Okay, so this raises a huge logistical question. How in the world do you move an entire army from Iraq to Syria without the enemy finding out? All the main roads were watched. They were garrisoned. There was only one other option, and it was to try something no one thought was possible. Khalid's whole plan basically came down to three things. First, absolute secrecy, and he achieved that by picking a route that was considered totally impassable. Second, unbelievable speed, so he could outrun any news of his movement. And third, the element of complete and total surprise. That was going to be his ultimate weapon. I mean, just look at this map. It really shows you how unbelievably audacious this plan was. This wasn't just a long walk. This was a march through a rugged, pathless, and almost completely waterless desert. A place where just surviving, let alone moving an army, was a miracle in itself. 5 days. That's it. That's how long it took them to cross a desert everyone said was impossible. Just let that sink in for a moment. To this day, military historians study this march as one of the boldest, most incredible calculated risks ever taken. It's a true testament to the commander's will and the absolute faith of his soldiers. And the crazy thing is, the gamble worked. It worked perfectly. Khalid's army literally appeared out of the desert, completely stunning the Byzantine forces. They showed up in Syria, immediately shattered the stalemate, and helped the other Muslim armies conquer Basra. It was the first major city in Syria to fall. Abu Bakr's gambit had paid off big time. But this amazing success in Syria brings up another really critical question. What about the front they just left behind? Abu Bakr had just pulled his best general and a huge chunk of his army out of Iraq. Who on earth could possibly hold the line against a furious Persian empire looking for revenge? Well, the man Abu Bakr trusted with this impossible task was al-Muthanna ibn Haritha, and the Caliph's choice here is just as brilliant as his decision to move Khalid. You see, he didn't just pick him for his military skill, he picked him for his character. He needed a leader who wasn't just brave, but was wise, faithful, and far-sighted enough to hold a weakened front together through sheer force of will. And just as you'd expect, the moment the Persian leadership hears that Khalid is gone, they see their chance. Their commander, Hormuz, gathers a huge army and sends a letter to al-Muthanna, not to negotiate, no, but to mock him and his supposedly tiny, weakened army. You just have to appreciate the psychological warfare going on here. The Persians try to insult them, sending an army of chicken and swine raisers, but al-Muthanna's reply is just genius. He doesn't just throw the insult back. He flips the entire narrative, framing their boast as proof that they're the ones who are actually weak and desperate. It was an absolute masterclass in controlling the story. And reports say the Persian court was genuinely terrified by the sheer confidence of his reply. But al-Muthanna backed up his words with action. He met the Persian army, fought a brutal battle, and won a huge victory. Abu Bakr's judgment was proven right once again. He hadn't just managed one front. He had put exactly the right leaders on both. So let's just pull back for a second and really appreciate the mind behind this entire incredible operation. This was never just about winning one battle. This was about a long-term, two-front vision for the entire war. And this final piece of advice, it tells you everything you need to know about his strategic thinking. Even on his deathbed, his mind is still on both fronts. He's still managing the war, telling his successor, Umar, to send Khalid's men, the specialists, back to Iraq as soon as Syria is secure. For Abu Bakr, this wasn't just about winning land. He believed, as the Prophet had taught, that victory was a divine responsibility. His mission was to carry out God's will, and that required foresight, humility, and steadfastness, right to the very end. This whole story leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? We so often remember history for its legendary generals and its famous battles. But this entire continent-shaping campaign was orchestrated by one leader, managing the war from hundreds of miles away, guided by this deep strategic and spiritual conviction. It really makes you wonder, what truly builds empires? Is it the sword of the general who wins the battle? Or is it the pen and the vision of the strategist who directs it?